Don't forget your inheritance. My stepmother mocked, her laughter echoing as she handed me a single dollar. I walked away, fighting back tears of betrayal. Little did she know, that dollar wasn't an insult. It was the first clue in my father's secret game. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, especially from the ones who should have loved you most, leave a like and share where you're watching from. This is my story, and it's for every woman who knows what it's like to fight for what's right, even when the world is against you. The crisp autumn air, usually a comfort, felt like a cruel joke that morning. It was the kind of chill that settled deep in your bones, mirroring the emptiness in my chest. My father's funeral. A day I dreaded, a day I'd known would come, but nothing truly prepares you for the finality of a grave. As the last clod of earth fell, a hush descended upon the small gathering. Family. My stepmother, Martha, her face a mask of practiced sorrow, clung to my half-sister, Tiffany, who dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. My half-brother, Mark, stood a little apart, a smirk playing on his lips, hidden only if you weren't looking for it. I was looking. I always was. They were my father's second family, the one he built after my mother passed, and the one that always made me feel like an outsider, a relic of a past he preferred to forget. Now, with him gone, that feeling of alienation was a chasm. I caught Martha's eye across the raw earth, and for a fleeting moment, I saw not grief, but a glint of something else. Triumph. The wake was a blur of casseroles and hushed condolences. I floated through it, nodding, smiling faintly, my mind elsewhere. It was a well-rehearsed charade, this family togetherness. We'd played it for years, ever since Dad married Martha when I was just 12. She'd been kind at first, overly sweet, almost too good to be true. Then, slowly, subtly, the lines were drawn. My pictures were moved from the mantel, my room redecorated to feel less like mine, my opinions dismissed in favor of Tiffany's or Mark's. Dad, caught in the middle, always tried to smooth things over, but his efforts grew weaker with each passing year. He loved them, I knew. But I always hoped a piece of his heart, a true, enduring peace, still belonged to me. A peace that remembered the little girl who sat on his lap while he read stories, the teenager he taught to change a tire, the young woman he walked down the aisle. The call came a week later, as expected. Mr. Henderson, Dad's longtime attorney, requested our presence for the reading of the will. The invitation was extended to Martha, Tiffany, Mark, and me. We gathered in his stately, wood-paneled office, the air thick with unspoken expectations. Martha, in a chic black suit, sat ramrod straight, Tiffany beside her, already looking as if she owned the place. Mark slouched, his eyes darting between me and the lawyer. I sat quietly, a knot tightening in my stomach. I wasn't naive. I knew Martha had been whispering in Dad's ear for years about how well off I was, how I didn't need anything. But still, a part of me, the hopeful part, clung to the belief that my father wouldn't completely forget his firstborn, that he would leave me something, a token, a sign that I still mattered. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, his voice resonating with solemnity. He began with the usual legal preamble, the official language washing over us. Then he started detailing the bequests. The antique grandfather clock to Tiffany, the classic car to Mark, the extensive stock portfolio, the lake house, and the bulk of the family fortune to Martha. Each item readout chipped away at my dwindling hope, yet I kept a poker face, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing my disappointment. Their smiles, however, grew wider with each passing inheritance. Tiffany exchanged a smug glance with Mark. Martha's lips curved ever so slightly. It was a slow, agonizing public disinheritance, designed, it seemed, for their amusement. Have you ever seen greed tear a family apart? Share your story in the comments. Let's stand together against injustice. Finally, Mr. Henderson paused, adjusting his spectacles. And to his daughter, Sarah, he began, his gaze meeting mine. My heart hammered. This was it, the moment of truth. He continued, my client, Robert Miller, leaves the sum of $1. A stunned silence filled the room, then Martha let out a little gasp, quickly stifled into a cough. Tiffany giggled, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. Mark actually snorted. The air was thick with their barely contained glee, a palpable wave of schadenfreude washing over me. $1. My father, the man who had once promised me the world, had left me a single, solitary dollar. It wasn't the money that hurt, not really. It was the public humiliation, the utter dismissal, the final, undeniable proof that I was nothing more than an afterthought. I felt a burning flush creep up my neck, but I held my head high. I would not cry. Not in front of them. $1? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, though it felt like a fragile whisper against the roar in my ears. Mr. Henderson nodded, his expression apologetic. That is correct, Miss Miller. $1. Martha leaned forward, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Oh, Sarah, dear, are you sure you heard correctly? Perhaps your father thought you were already so well off. You didn't need anything else. Tiffany chimed in. Yeah, he probably figured you had enough of your own. Or maybe he just forgot about you, teehee. Mark just shook his head, a pitying, condescending look on his face. They savored the moment, relishing in my perceived downfall, completely oblivious to the quiet storm brewing within me. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said, my eyes fixed on his, deliberately avoiding the triumphant gazes of my stepfamily. I think I've heard enough. As I turned to leave, Martha called out, Don't forget your inheritance, Sarah. Wouldn't want you to miss out on your fortune. Her laughter, joined by Tiffany's, echoed in my ears as I walked out, the sound of physical blow. The world outside felt just as cold as the one within me. $1. It was a statement. A final, crushing rejection. And as I walked away, a seed of something new, something hard and unyielding, began to sprout in the desolate landscape of my grief. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about justice. Weeks turned into months. I went through the motions of life, but everything felt dulled, muted. The funeral, the will reading, the laughter. It all replayed in my mind, a constant, nagging wound. I tried to talk to friends, but how do you explain such a blatant, public dismissal by your own father? They offered platitudes, but no one truly understood the depth of the humiliation. I retreated, spending my evenings alone, staring into the flickering fire, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I not been a good enough daughter? Had I always been so easily replaced? The questions gnawed at me, leaving me hollow. But beneath the pain, something else was stirring. A quiet resentment. A growing certainty that this wasn't just my father's doing. Martha's influence, her insidious manipulations, had been a constant presence in his later years. It started subtly. Little comments to Dad about my extravagant spending, my unreliable nature, my lack of appreciation for what he'd given me. I remembered one Thanksgiving, years ago, when I'd excitedly told Dad about a promotion at work. Martha had immediately interjected. Oh, that's nice, dear. But I hope you're still saving for retirement, unlike some people who expect to be taken care of. Her eyes had flickered to mine, a barely perceptible jab. Dad had just chuckled, oblivious, or perhaps unwilling to confront her passive-aggressive attacks. I saw it all now, with a clarity that stung. Martha had systematically, meticulously, poisoned my father's perception of me, painting me as a selfish, ungrateful child, unworthy of his legacy. And my father, weakened by age and her relentless whispers, had believed her. My anger, a slow burn initially, began to smolder into a dangerous fire. I decided I couldn't let this stand. Not for the money, but for the principle. For my dignity. For the memory of the father I once knew, the one who would never have done such a thing. I called Mr. Henderson again, hoping for some shred of insight. He was kind, but firm. Sarah, your father was of sound mind when he signed the will. There's no legal basis to contest it. My heart sank. So, that was it then? They won? They had successfully erased me, and there was nothing I could do? As I hung up, defeat washed over me, heavy and suffocating. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, seeing not myself, but a victim. A pawn in Martha's game. And then, a flicker. A tiny spark of defiance. Number I wouldn't be a victim. A few days later, I was cleaning out some old boxes in my attic, things I'd moved from my childhood home years ago. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight, illuminating forgotten memories. An old photo album, filled with faded pictures of my mother and father, me as a baby. A ceramic mug I'd made in kindergarten. And then, tucked away beneath a pile of old letters, I found it. A small, ornate wooden box, its lock rusted with age. I remembered it instantly. Dad had given it to me when I was 10, telling me it was for my most precious treasures. I'd filled it with polished stones, a particularly pretty feather, and a tiny, tarnished silver locket. But what truly caught my eye now was the inscription on the bottom. For my Sarah, always remember where your roots lie. My heart ached. If you've ever felt utterly betrayed by family, hit that like button. Your support fuels these stories of overcoming adversity. I pried open the box, the lid creaking in protest. Inside, beneath the long-forgotten childhood trinkets, was a single, neatly folded letter. It was Dad's handwriting, unmistakable. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Sarah, it began, if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. And if you are reading this, it means they have gone too far. My breath hitched. He knew. He knew what they would do. The letter continued, detailing Martha's increasing pressure, her constant criticisms, her subtle threats to alienate him from Tiffany and Mark if he didn't comply with her wishes regarding his estate. He wrote about his guilt, his weakness, his fear of being alone. He explained that he'd tried to stand up to her, but her grip had tightened, suffocating him. My eyes blurred with tears, but this time, they weren't tears of grief, but of understanding. The letter went on to reveal his true plan. He knew that if he left me anything substantial in the official will, Martha would contest it endlessly, dragging my name through the mud, draining my resources in legal battles. So, he had devised a different way. A secret. He detailed a series of instructions, cryptic clues embedded in seemingly innocuous memories, all leading to one crucial piece of information. Information that would not only prove Martha's manipulative nature, but also secure my true inheritance. He ended the letter with, "Forgive me, my love, for my weakness. But never forget, you are my firstborn, and you are my legacy. Find what is truly yours." I clutched the letter to my chest, a wave of emotions washing over me. Relief, sorrow, and a fierce, burning resolve. My father hadn't abandoned me. He had fought for me in his own quiet, desperate way. The first clue was subtle. Dad had mentioned in the letter a childhood game we used to play, a treasure hunt for my birthday every year. The first clue always led to the oldest tree in our backyard, a giant oak with a swing. I remembered the swing, rusted now, hanging forlornly from a gnarled branch. I drove back to the old family home, the house where I'd grown up, now Martha's domain. The garden was overgrown, uncared for. My heart ached at the sight. I found the oak tree, its ancient roots pushing through the earth. My father's letter had specifically mentioned a loose brick near the base. I knelt, pushing aside years of leaves and debris, and there it was. A slightly dislodged brick. Behind it, nestled in the damp soil, was a small, waterproof tin. Inside was another note, typed this time, and a key. The note instructed me to go to the local library, a place my father had frequented for decades. The key, it said, was to a specific locker in the archives. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just a treasure hunt. It was a race against time, a quiet battle against those who thought they had won. I went to the library, the familiar smell of old books, a comforting presence. The librarian, Mrs. Gable, still worked there, her memory as sharp as ever. "Sarah Miller," she smiled. "Haven't seen you since your father passed. So sorry for your loss." We chatted for a moment, and I casually asked about the old archives. She pointed me to a dusty back room, filled with rows of metal lockers. I found the one corresponding to the key, my heart pounding. What would you do if your family stole your inheritance? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Inside the locker, I found not money, but a thick, leather-bound journal. It was my father's, filled with his elegant handwriting, detailing not just his thoughts, but his business dealings, his investments, and critically, his true net worth. Pages and pages of intricate financial details, far more extensive than anything Mr. Henderson had revealed. But there was something else, something even more significant. Tucked into the back was a deed. A deed to a piece of land, a large parcel of undeveloped property on the outskirts of town. Property that was not listed in the official will. Property that, according to the date on the deed, had been purchased years ago, long before his marriage to Martha, and put solely in my name. My name, Sarah Miller. It was dated 5 years after my mother died, 3 years before he met Martha. A gift from a father to his grieving daughter, a silent promise of security. I stared at the deed, then back at the journal. My father had been an astute businessman, and this land, once considered worthless, had exploded in value over the years due to a new highway development. It was worth millions. Not just a token, but a substantial fortune, completely separate from the estate Martha had so gleefully claimed. He had never told me about it, perhaps waiting for the right moment, or perhaps realizing it was the only way to ensure my future against Martha's avarice. The revelation hit me with the force of a tidal wave. My father hadn't just left me $1, he had left me a legacy, carefully hidden, patiently waiting to be discovered. The journal also contained a detailed account of Martha's subtle manipulations, her constant demands for money, her increasing control over his finances, her relentless efforts to isolate him from me. He'd meticulously documented everything. Armed with this evidence, I felt a new surge of determination. This wasn't just about my inheritance anymore. It was about exposing Martha for who she truly was. I decided against going back to Mr. Henderson. His hands were tied by the official will. I needed someone new, someone who wasn't entangled in my father's past. I found a sharp young attorney named David Miller, highly recommended for his aggressive approach to complex estate cases. He listened patiently as I laid out my story, showing him the letter, the journal, and finally, the deed. He examined everything meticulously, his expression shifting from skepticism to disbelief, then to a quiet excitement. "This is remarkable, Sarah," he finally said, his eyes gleaming. "This changes everything. Your father was a genius." We began to build our case, quietly, methodically. David confirmed the validity of the deed, the immense value of the land, and the devastating impact it would have on Martha's claim to the entire estate. He also identified several inconsistencies in the financial records Martha had submitted for probate, based on the detailed entries in Dad's journal. It was clear she had been siphoning off funds, manipulating accounts, and grossly understating the true value of the estate to avoid taxes and inflate her own share. The journal, coupled with the deed, painted a damning picture. It was not just about the $1, it was about Martha's calculated greed, her financial impropriety, and her deliberate efforts to defraud me and the estate. We had enough evidence not just to claim my land, but to expose her entire scheme. If you believe in justice and that the truth always comes out, subscribe to my channel and join our community. The day we filed the lawsuit was a blur of legal documents and nervous anticipation. We didn't inform Martha or her children directly. We let the legal system deliver the news. The papers were served on a Tuesday morning. I imagine the scene, Martha likely enjoying her morning coffee, perhaps already planning how to spend her ill-gotten gains, only to have a process server interrupt her complacent bliss. The thought brought a grim satisfaction. David assured me it would be a shock. They had absolutely no idea this was coming. They believed their victory was complete, their deception sealed. They were about to learn that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who seem to have lost everything, are the most dangerous. The phone call from Martha came that afternoon. Her voice, usually so composed and saccharine, was shrill, laced with panic. "What is the meaning of this, Sarah? Are you trying to destroy your father's memory? This is an outrage." I remained calm, my voice steady. "You know exactly what this means, Martha. It means the truth is finally coming out." She sputtered, threatened, even begged, but I held my ground. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said, and hung up, cutting off her tirade. It felt incredibly empowering. For years, I had been the one on the defensive, the one constantly trying to prove my worth. Now, the tables had turned. She was the one cornered, the one facing exposure. It was a sweet, satisfying feeling, knowing that her carefully constructed world was about to crumble. The legal battle was intense, but David was brilliant. He systematically dismantled Martha's claims, presenting the journal, the deed, and the evidence of her financial malfeasance. She tried to deny everything, to portray herself as a grieving widow being unjustly attacked, but her lies crumbled under cross-examination. Tiffany and Mark, initially dismissive, grew increasingly agitated as the evidence mounted. They realized their mother's actions were not just affecting her, but their own substantial inheritances, which were now being scrutinized for their role in the scheme. The lake house, the stock portfolio, everything was in jeopardy. Their smug smiles had vanished, replaced by looks of fear and resentment. It was a beautiful thing to witness. The final hearing was packed. Family, friends, even local reporters, curious about the scandalous details of the Miller estate. Martha, looking haggard and defeated, sat beside her lawyer, her usual composure completely shattered. Tiffany and Mark looked like frightened children, their once unshakable sense of entitlement replaced by palpable anxiety. David stood before the judge, a commanding presence. He presented his final arguments, summarizing the overwhelming evidence against Martha. He detailed how my father, aware of Martha's manipulations and fearing for my rightful inheritance, had used the $1 clause as a smokescreen, knowing it would deter any immediate contestation while his true legacy for me lay hidden, waiting to be discovered. The courtroom was hushed, captivated by the intricate tale of betrayal and cunning. The truth always finds a way. What's the biggest family secret you've ever uncovered? Share in the comments below. Then came the moment of the final clause, not from my father's official will, but from his secret journal. David read from the journal, his voice clear and resonant. And to Martha, Tiffany, and Mark, he quoted, "While the official will may reflect a significant inheritance, know that your true reward for your greed and deceit will be the loss of everything you sought to take from my daughter. The land, Sarah's land, holds a secret that will dismantle your ill-gotten gains. And to Sarah, my dear, when you reveal your truth, they will learn the true meaning of justice." Martha gasped, a choked sound of disbelief and terror. Tiffany burst into tears. Mark buried his face in his hands. My father, even in death, had orchestrated the ultimate revenge, a final, poetic justice against those who had wronged me. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. The deed to the land in my name was upheld, making me a multimillionaire, entirely independent of the Miller estate. Furthermore, due to the extensive evidence of Martha's financial fraud, she was not only stripped of her entire inheritance but also faced criminal charges. Her assets were frozen, and she would likely lose everything, including the family home she had so coveted. Tiffany and Mark, while not directly implicated in the fraud, saw their own inheritances significantly reduced to cover the legal costs and restitution. Their world, built on their mother's deceit, crumbled around them. As the verdict was read, I looked at Martha, her face a mask of utter devastation. There was no triumph in my heart, only a quiet, profound sense of closure. Justice had been served. This story proves that what goes around truly comes around. If you agree, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next story of ultimate family revenge. Weeks later, I received a letter from Martha. Not an apology, but a desperate plea. She was facing destitution, her reputation in tatters, her children estranged. She was now living in a small, rented room, stripped of all the luxuries she had once taken for granted. She asked for my help, alone, anything to get her back on her feet. I read the letter, my mind drifting back to the day of the will reading, to her mocking laughter, her triumphant sneer as I walked away with my single dollar. The tables had turned completely. The woman who had tried to erase me, to leave me with nothing, was now begging for my mercy. It was a moment of profound reflection. My father's revenge was complete, and his silent lesson echoed through my heart. True wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in integrity, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. I didn't respond to her letter. Some lessons, I realized, must be learned the hard way. I decided to honor my father's memory by using my newfound fortune to establish a foundation dedicated to helping elderly individuals protect their estates from predatory family members, ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate. This story is a testament to the power of perseverance, the enduring bond of true family, and the ultimate triumph of justice. If you believe in standing up for what's right, against all odds, then you are part of our family. Hit subscribe and join us for more inspiring stories of revenge, redemption, and the unbreakable spirit of women who refuse to be silenced. Thank you for watching, and remember, your story matters.